Okay, last week, let's do a recap actually. So, the first session of this series, we titled it Raped by Commentators and History. And then last week, we looked at power struggle or poor judgment. Today, we're going to look at when speech speaks. When speech speaks. Interesting titles. So, how do I get these titles? I don't get them till I sit down to put my PowerPoint together. And as I am doing it, the title pops up. So, that is where the titles come from. Today, when speech speaks, we're going to continue where we stopped from. But before we hit the ground running, let's see. Anything that stood out? Or any comments from what you've heard so far from the past two sessions? Is the story changing? Is the narrative becoming something that you didn't think it would become?
Yes.
Yes? Awesome.
Yes.
Awesome. Let's see how today how things take us, where the text will lead us to today.
Rabbi,
Yes, Madam Drew.
I have a couple of, I guess the story is evolving. I must admit, it has really evolved from the first time I read it when my head almost blew off my shoulder. But now I've noticed you told us to read it in a different way.
Yes.
So it is that I've seen the word the donkeys are mentioned 3 times in one chapter. It said, and in the King James it only says there's 2 or a couple. It's mentioned 3 times. The word took is mentioned 5 times. So we have to be cognizant of numbering of the number of times something is mentioned. And so I thought it bizarre that they mentioned the donkeys more times than I didn't think they had much meaning. But you said when something was mentioned more than a couple times, it has some poignant meaning to the story. So I don't know what these donkeys have to do with the story, but they're mentioned 3 times in chapter 19. Also, the word took is mentioned 4 times, and taking. Those words are mentioned, and they have to have some significance. I was hoping you could bring some or shed some light on those 2 words, the donkeys and the word took. There's a took in verse 25, a took in 15, a took in 28. So took has to have some kind of relevance for them to keep mentioning the word took. So those are just some things I noticed, and I was hoping you could shed some light on that for us.
I knew Madame Drew was a prophetess. I see she's seen my notes. Beautiful. Beautiful. We play with numbers today. Nice. That is one tool that one has to use amongst the many tools in deciphering the text. Numbers. The text uses very limited language, number of words to narrate a story. For example, if the Tower of Babel took place in our day, where languages were introduced and then things changed, I mean, you would have encyclopedias, books with different chapters. Like, you'd have a huge book describing what took place. The Torah just gives you one chapter. So, oh, this is what happens. But that one chapter, if you know how to apply the tools that the author expects you to use, it becomes so huge. Becomes so huge. So numbers play a role. We've been doing Judges 19 for 3 sessions. You would think it's just a simple read, but no, there's a lot in there that the author is saying that he's not saying. Okay, let's hit the ground running. I have to be out of here by 11 o'clock, so let's hit the ground running. Lord have mercy. Okay, again, what we are studying, this is sensitive. So I want us to be particular about what we say, our words. Like I said, this is something that's happened to someone in the text. It's happened to people who are listening to me here in class on YouTube, those who will listen someday. So we should be very particular with choice of words and how we, come off. Let's be sympathetic where we need to be, and let's be firm where we need to be. So please, let's observe this so that we are correct biblically. When speech speaks, the Levite in our narrative speaks 4 times. Madame Drew is looking at donkeys. She's looking at the word took. And she says it appears 3 times here. Took appears 5 times. There's got to be a meaning. Let's start with the Levite. The Levite speaks 4 times in our narrative, between Judges 19 verses 1 and Judges 20 verses 7. On each occasion of his speech, his character is revealed a little bit more. Make sure that the YouTube guys are seeing that. Okay. He's speaking. He's telling us something. He speaks 4 times. And what the author, Samuel, is doing is showing us the character of the Levite through what he says and what he doesn't say. That is why I titled it, When Speech Speaks. Number 1, we should notice his lack of speech during the prolonged exchange with the concubine's father. If you remember, if we go back to their back and forth, when he leaves home, when the concubine goes out to meet him, brings him home, and he's interacting with the father, his father-in-law, we notice his lack of speech. The exchange is pretty prolonged. His father-in-law, the concubine's father, speaks 4 times. Let's point them out. Judges 19, he speaks in verses 5. And the girl's father said to his son-in-law. He speaks in verses 6. And the girl's father said to the man. He speaks in verses 8. And the girl's father said, refresh yourselves now. He speaks in verses 9. And his father-in-law, the girl's father, said to him. So the father, his father-in-law, speaks 4 times. Each time, until the last, the Levite passively agrees. His lack of speech suggesting indolence or lack of resolve. When he does finally exert himself to leave, it is too late on the fifth day that they only are able to travel about 6 miles before dusk forces them to stop. It is at this point that he makes his first verbal contribution. When he leaves home, we don't hear a speech. When he comes to his father's house, there's a prolonged interaction. He doesn't speak much. He makes his first verbal contribution when, if you remember, his servant advises him, gives him counsel. And his master said to him, there's a Levite coming to speak, we will not turn aside into this city of heathens, nor to any other cities that are not of the children of Israel, but we will journey up to Gibeah. And he said to his servant, come and let us approach to one of these places, and we will lodge in Gibeah or in Ramah. He wants to get to Ramah. That's what he wants to get to. And they passed on and went, and the sun set upon them near Gibeah, which belongs to Benjamin. He doesn't speak, but his first speech is deeply ironical, stinging, sharp. As we saw last week, these words reveal him as unwise, showing what will prove to be a fatal nonchalance about their safety within a city of Israel. This is his first speech, and we discussed the trouble with his speech last week. Like I said, Samuel, the author, is using the man's speech to tell us a lot about him. What was his second speech? The second speech is to the old man who might offer them hospitality. Judges 19. And they turned aside there to come and lodge in Gibeah, and he came and sat in the city, no, somewhere in the city. But no one brought them home to lodge. And behold, an old man came from his work out of the field at evening, and the man was from the mountain of Ephraim, and he resided in Gibeah, but the people of the area were Benjamites. And he raised his eyes and saw the wayfaring man in the city, and the old man said, where are you going, and from where do you come? Question is posed to him. He's going to give his second speech. And he said to him, the Levite is saying to this elderly man who came from the field, we are passing from Bethlehem of Judah to the edge of the mountain of Ephraim. From there am I. And I went until Bethlehem of Judah, and I am going to the house of Yah. He's going to Shiloh. And no one takes me home. And also there's straw. And I think this is wheat that is beaten, I think, for our donkeys, and also bread and wine for myself. for your maidservant, and for the lad who is with your servant, there is no want of anything. Do you notice something in this man's speech here? Something important, something critical. I know Samuel is using his speech to tell me about this man, so I am extremely critical of what I read. Is there anything that the man says here?
Rabbi,
Mr. Vincent.
is he coming off like he kind of like cocky, like like he got the way he talking, like ain't no want for anything. I got the wine for you. You make everything is taken care of. Is he kind of like arrogant a little bit, or?
Yeah, yes. It's there. We'll look at that. But yes, you have a point. Yes, we see arrogance here. Yes. Awesome. There's something else.
Rabbi,
Mr. Drew.
yes, sir. I think he's selling himself. When I say selling himself, I mean his idea of that he has, like you said, has everything. All he just needs is a place to stay. You know, if you just hook me up, I can be on my way. You know what I'm saying? That's what I think he's doing.
Okay. Yes, he is selling himself.
Rabbi,
Mr. Shanti.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, sir.
I'm looking at the beginning of verse 18, and he said to him. So I'm looking at two things. That there was more things going on in the dialogue we don't know. And when I see, and he said to him, was that the Levite or the servant speaking to the old man?
The Levite and the... Oh, was that a question, Mr. Shanti? A statement? Or the Levite and the servant?
No.
Okay.
Just
Okay. Nice.
Possible.
Madam Cynthia.
No. To me, he sounds. I don't think he sounds arrogant. He sounds vexed.
Vex
He's
as
like,
well. Okay, yeah.
yeah, vexed. He's like, I don't know what the problem. He's like, I don't know what the problem is. I'm not going to cost no one nothing, right? Number one, I'm going to the house of the Lord, which means I'm a Levite. I'm doing something in God's name or something. He's a bit pious in that way.
Ah, I like that word. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. Right, so he's going to the house of the Lord. Like, why do you need to tell me that? Like, keep it moving. Why are you still here? You know what I'm saying, like, dude,
Yeah.
like, keep it to yourself.
Okay.
Right?
Yes.
And then he's like, and the other things that I've got, like, and no one takes me home. I've got straw. I've got all the things. I don't need nothing from no one. So I've got straw for my donkeys. I've got bread and wine for myself. Everything's cool. I don't know what the problem is, kind of thing. It's kind of almost like vexed.
Okay.
Like, it doesn't sound like somebody he doesn't understand the situation that he's in. You ain't got nowhere to go, really. But you're going to like, do you know what I'm saying?
Correct.
He doesn't understand. That's what, I don't know, this Levite guy, man.
Awesome. I like
Rabbi.
what you said, Madam Cynthia. Yes, go ahead, Mr. Vincent.
Aren't people supposed to take the Levites in no matter what? Like, I thought that was a thing.
Yeah, they're told
like,
to
so
take
when he's
care
like,
of them.
ain't nobody taking me in, like I kind of like what she said a little bit. It's like you supposed to take me in, and on top of that, I don't need nothing from you.
Correct. Yeah, him being a Levite should have given him perks. We're supposed to take care of the Levites, etc. Very good points. But look at this. Look at this. We have him give a speech A second speech, that is the Levite. Here, in his second speech, it is instructive to compare what the Levite tells the old man with what we have been told in the narrative. We have the narrative. We, the readers, we have so much information that most people in the narrative don't have. We are semi-gods because we know what is happening in the story. We have everybody's perspective. The narrative or the narrator has given us a narrative till here. The Levite has been questioned and he's going to give an answer, an account. Is something in here not accurate to what we know as readers?
Yeah, it's the house of the Lord thing that gets to me. It keeps on popping out at me.
What do we know about what he's doing? Can somebody summarize it? What is he doing? Madame Majua says he's lying. He's going home. Of course. We are told that he leaves the house. Go ahead, Madame Sonja.
He's playing the Levi card.
Awesome.
So he's not really going to the house of the Lord, and his business was not Levite business, but he's acting like it was Levite business.
Yeah. The Levite gives an inaccurate account of the purpose of his journey. Wait a second. We started the narrative. Your concubine left, and you're on a mission to go bring her back home. The text doesn't tell us anywhere that you're going to Shiloh. You're going to the house of Yah. It doesn't tell us that. But from nowhere, when you ask the question, he answers. We are passing from Bethlehem of Judah to the edge of the mountain of Ephraim. From there am I. And I went until Bethlehem of Judah. And I'm going to Shiloh, pretty much. I'm going to the house. No, you're not. You're going home. We know you're going home. So he gives an inaccurate account of the purpose of his journey, making no mention of the concubine, but implying that he's going to worship or serve at the shrine at Shiloh. But the narrator has made no mention of any such intentions. The intention says he's going home. So why the discrepancy between speech and the represented world? The represented world is what I just narrated. We know he's going home.
Is it because the old man is kind of asking, why are you out so late and you haven't made any plans for somewhere to stay? I don't know if he's trying to justify the fact that he's left so late because it was dangerous to do. So I don't know if the old man is coming to him kind of like, why are you in this situation and you have people with you anyway?
Correct.
And he's trying to justify it. Or if it's just a matter of his character in general, because when you look at everything he says, he seems like a really horrible person. I read the narrative and I think, well, I understand why she ran away from him, because he doesn't sound like a nice person at all. So maybe, I don't know if it's either of those.
Correct. If he's going to Shiloh, yes, we'll know he's going to Shiloh. The Levites don't live in Shiloh. They go to Shiloh to serve for a week and then they go back home because they have different houses that come and serve for 1 week. They rotate and then they go back home. They don't live in Shiloh, as in the house of Yah. They don't live there. So if he says, I'm going home to Benjamin, yes, correct. That's where you're going. But to bring Shiloh into the picture, he's playing the Levite card. meaning that he's not being truthful, he's not being accurate. His account is wanted. The old man may not know, but we as readers, we can see clearly. And the text is not written to those in the narrative, the text is written to us who are reading now. So, like I asked, why the discrepancy between speech and represented world? What the narrator has told us, that is the represented world. It is more likely that the Levite feels ashamed of the purpose of his journey, because it would, after all, amount to an admission that he had failed to keep good order in his home. So, what does he do? He massages the truth to represent himself more favorably to his host.
Rabbi.
Mr. Vincent.
I agree with that. But I was thinking not that far deep into it, but saying playing a Levite card and letting him know that I'm a Levite, like off the rip, because I want to get help. But saying I'm going to the house of the Lord does sound better than I'm going to look for my concubine. So as a human, I kind of probably would have did the same thing. You know, it sounds better than I'm
I know,
for my
right?
concubine. It just sounds a whole lot better, and I will be more likely to get help. Like, you know, I'm a Levite, and I'm about to go do the Lord's work.
I know, right?
Ain't nobody gonna take me in. I'm gonna be, you know. But it sounds way better than, hey, I'm gonna keep it real. I'm on my way home. I'm looking for my concubine.
Correct.
And he probably wouldn't even mention he was a Levite.
True, true. I mean, you make a very good point. Now, would come back and answer the question, why did the Levite card not work? We'll come back and answer that, Mr. Vincent. Very good question that you've posed here. Why did it not work? He was hoping, he was thinking, he was betting on it to work, but it doesn't work. We'll have to find out why it doesn't.
Brother Basil, you know what? Mr. Vincent, thank you so much for that. That makes a human sense. But the problem I have with this Levi is that I just think it's his character. I'm probably going to step a little further into the story. I know you're not probably there yet, but it's like, when he goes and he calls that whole drama about when he says that Benjamin wants to kill him and his concubine. He actually used the word, because what he does actually makes it out to be, the issue becomes a capital punishment rather than what it was. So it just seems like he likes to exaggerate and twist and turn. And it makes me wonder, is this the kind of Levite people that was running when Eli was in the temple? Because if this is the kind of Levite that you have to be dealing with in the temple, it's scary stuff.
Hold that thought, Madam Cynthia. We're coming there. We're coming. Awesome, Madam Cynthia. Yes, Mrs. Drew.
That is awesome. I also thought that when he met the old man he was from Ephraim too, so they may have known each other, or the one may have known of the other, and he knows when you run into somebody that you know someplace outside of where it is that you both live, you all have a commonality. You know something about each other. And
correct.
There's a commonality.
Correct. Maybe your accent. Yes, even your accent would give you up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Everything would give you away. So there's something that the old man sees, perhaps, that the Levite is giving away that he doesn't even know he's giving away. So he may not look like or he may have seen this guy before somewhere, or he can read him. he's reading this guy. He doesn't, so he has to say all these things. I brought all this. I got this. You don't have to give me anything because the old man is reading him.
Correct. Correct. True. Let me give you, Madam Drew, what you're saying is very true. I give you a funny story. When I came to college here in the States, in my anthropology class, there was this guy. The moment I saw him, I knew that he was Nigerian, but he did not, come off as a Nigerian. He was acting all American, so I couldn't approach him because I am like, okay, maybe he's been here for too long, but he has the Nigerian features that I know of. So one day, and when he spoke, he did not have a Nigerian accent. I mean, we are good with that. Sometimes we can switch our. I call it tongue twisting. We can switch the accent and sound British or sound Nigerian or Ghanaian. Like the Jamaicans do as well. They go back and forth depending on the situation. So we were in class, and then we got to the topic of evolution, where the man said that we came from monkeys. So when the professor said that, this guy was sitting next to me on my right. He's like, "Now, wow." Just that expression and the accent he said it with gave away his Nigerian background. And I was just in tears laughing. So I turned to him and I told him, I knew you were one of us. And he busted out laughing. So you have a point. Just by seeing him, talking to him, maybe how he behaves, maybe he knew that, this guy is from home. Absolutely.
Rabbi.
Mr. Vincent.
Now see, she got me going. So now I see the narrative as like when he was coming out the field, he spotted him immediately.
Correct.
Just like when you see somebody, and not to take away from, just to bring it to our perspective up here,
Yes.
like when you see somebody, we normally hang up in this area, and then you see somebody that's not from that area, but you cool with them, and you see them in that area, so you're like, what you doing here?
Correct.
What brought you over here?
Correct.
How'd you just out in the open in the city like this? So that made me think like that now. Like he spotted him coming out the field, immediately went to him like, what you doing here?
Correct. Yep.
Like you up to something, basically, especially when you know him, because that's how we'd be like in my younger days. Like, man, you must be over here seeing some girl or something, but you don't come over here.
Correct.
What you up to?
Yes.
So that's how I get from that narrative now. When he came out the field, he spotted him, and he's like, man, what you up to?
Correct. Yep.
What you doing here?
Awesome. Awesome. So as Madam Cynthia says, he mentioned Shiloh to seem pious, giving him a better chance of getting someone to host him. We're going to find out if he's really pious. So this is his second speech, and we've been able to decipher what Samuel is trying to tell us without telling us. Now we encounter another period of disturbing silence. There was silence. Then when he spoke, he was very sharp to his servant. And then the next time he spoke, he was inaccurate, like making things up to look good, to give him better chances. And then there is troubling, disturbing silence after that. Just as the Levite quietly agreed with his father-in-law's excessive hospitality, now he quietly concedes as the old man argues with his would-be attackers on his behalf. As they were enjoying themselves, and behold, the men of the city, men of wickedness, surrounded the house and were beaten at the door. And they spoke to the man, the elderly master of the house, saying, bring out the man that came into your house, so that we may be intimate with him. And the man, the master of the house, went out to them and said to them, "No, my brothers, do not do so wickedly now. Since this man has come into my house, do not commit this disgraceful deed. Here is my virgin daughter and his concubine. I will bring them out now, and you should afflict them and do with them as you please. But to this man, do not do this disgraceful act." But the man did not want to listen to him, and the man grabbed his concubine and brought him forth to them outside. He doesn't speak here. He's dangerously silent. It is not until the dreadful events of the night are over that he speaks again as he prepares to continue his journey. And what does he say? "Arise and let us go." When you read this, there's no other feeling than to get extremely angry. It hardly needs stating that these two brutal words, kum, yalak, reveal a staggering depth of indifference and lack of compassion to the woman whose plight should have evoked the deepest pity, even if she had not been suffering what she went through to ensure your own safety. This is a Levite. We've seen his character play in front of us from just 4 speeches that he gave. I mean, he was leaving. We'll come to that next week. It's, oh boy. Did he forget that he threw someone to the wolves? Like, that evening? And he's just about to bounce, like, check out, like. Okay. That is his 3rd speech. Finally, the Levite addresses the nation. This is what he says. "And the Levite man, the husband of the murdered woman, answered and said, I came into Gibeah, that belongs to Benjamin, I and my concubine to lodge. And the residents of Gibeah arose against me and surrounded the house upon me at night. Me they intended to kill, and my concubine they afflicted, following which she died. So I grabbed my concubine and dissected her and sent her throughout the territory of the inheritance of Israel. For they committed lewdness and disgrace in Israel. Behold, you are all children of Israel. Give yourselves a decision and advice here." As we've seen, when this guy speaks, we have to check it. We have to fact check anytime he opens his mouth to say anything. Once again, it is instructive to compare his account of events with what the narrator has told us.
Rabbi.
Manashe says fake news. Go ahead, Mr. Vincent.
Yeah, man, he a fake Levite. He ain't real. This dude ain't. He not real. He don't even have no right to even say what he just said. He's leaving out all the part. He did that. He threw it. He making it seem like, it was a New York undercover crime special victim unit thing that happened, and he leaving out all the details of what happened. This didn't go down like that. It did a little bit, but dude, fake for the people. He for the people. That's what we call him.
Yes, because the Levites suggest that the attack was organized. It was one organized involving Gibeah's leading citizens rather than a gang. In Judges 19, as they were enjoying themselves, and behold, the men of the city, if you look at it, we'll come to it, men of wickedness. It says sons of Belial. It's not the whole city, it's just a gang. So he comes and he speaks, and the details are off. Okay. He implies there was a threat to his own life, though there is no direct evidence for that in the narrative. They didn't say bring him so we kill him. He said bring him so that we may be intimate with him. Who mentioned death? They want to kill me. No. Nobody said that. Number 3, he entirely glosses over his own role, as Mr. Vincent said, in the events of the night, implying that his concubine was somehow seized by the mob, rather than confessing that he was the one that put her out. No, they didn't grab him. No, they didn't take him. No, you grabbed her and you sent her out. Why leave that in your speech?
Brother Basil,
Yes.
such to interrupt you. This is not Eli's one of his sons, is it?
Oh, hold on. We're coming there. Hold on. No, it's not, but we're coming there. Number 4, he also glosses over the nature of the concubine's experience. But the man did not want to listen to him. The man grabbed his concubine and brought her forth to them outside. He glosses over the nature of her experience. Rather than they raped her and abused her, he says, and my concubine they afflicted, following which she died. Afflicted. Is that what happened? No. So this,
Rabbi,
Madam Jew.
over here, they call that a spin doctor. He's a person who puts the spin on the story in the way that makes him look good. He has to come out looking squeaky clean on the story. He had to tell the people that they were trying to kill me and that So all of those excuses or massaging, the massaging of the truth have to make the Levite look. He's trying to make himself look good in the story to the public, so that he doesn't come up against any charges. He's a Donald Trump. He's a Rudy Giuliani. He'll tell the story any way he needs to make himself look good. Now, it doesn't have to be resonating in truth. It just has to make me look good.
You know what it is? What I'm baffled about, Brother Basil, is what is the necessity for him to even speak about it? Do you understand? Like,
Okay.
nobody's asking you what happened to your concubine. He went out of his way to cause this stuff, and through this act that he did and this whole thing, people, like, thousands of people died. They went into war and stuff.
Correct. Correct.
Like, it's shocking to, like, the thing he did is so big, like, it caused war in Israel. Like, and the thing about it is
No, I think he has to go again. He has to. He is. It's very. It's a very common domestic violence narrative for a start, but also it is just like what we're seeing playing out with Trump. He has to make it into a big thing that's going to escalate, because otherwise he would deserve, I don't know if it'd be death penalty, but there's some kind of justice that will come on him. Remember, the woman ran away. There's a reason why she ran away and went to her father's house. So when they hear news that the girl is dead, then they're going to be like, well, what did he do? Then you have the man who took them in and his whole household to give a testimony of what he did, that he threw her out. So to go and be really over the top and to cut her up into pieces, and can you imagine being the people that received this arm or this leg or whatever piece of this woman? It blows up the whole story into something really shocking outside of what it actually is. So he actually has to, he is literally like Trump. He has to do it, otherwise he ends up getting impeached and he ends up getting bankrupt and he ends up going to prison. So he has to kind of make this whole big story and try and, you know, do whatever he can to save his own skin. And this is what is happening. My only question is, why did he go back for the girl in the first place? And that's where I see all the years that I worked with vulnerable women and the domestic violence narrative. He only went to get her because he still wanted to be in control, and probably his pride that she'd run away. But he obviously doesn't care for her in any way. And it's just really sad that he made that effort to go on that journey to bring her back. And I think that's why her dad had tried to delay him, because probably I haven't been here for the last couple of weeks. I don't know if you discussed it already, but it's probably more an issue of social standing. They don't want to have a broken marriage and a Levite at that, the social status and everything like that. But it's not unusual if you're talking about a domestic violence narrative or someone who has a mental health problem like Trump.
Rabbi.
Mr. Vincent. Thank you, Madam
Yeah,
Sherry.
yeah, thanks for that. I totally agree with that. It's like a movie. It's literally like a movie. Like one of these movies you see on Lifetime or the whatever channel that they watch all these crazy FBI cold case stuff. Because his reputation, like you see it in the movie, they will let their reputation and their pride and their status, and that you will go far enough to the dramatics that you went to cutting this young lady up, knowing that everything that you're saying does not line up with what really happened, but yet you did this. Like you thought of this idea that I'm going to do this to make everything seem right just for you, just for your reputation, just for who you are, or to cover up everything. Like you're covering up. You had to go far.
Yep.
And cause mayhem in the end. It's like a movie.
Yes. See, the Levite is self-serving. These are some of the words I came up with for him. You know, he's corrupt, deceitful, heartless. The facts reported by the Levites in Judges 20 are not consistent with Judges 19. The character of this Levite is revealed through his only four speeches. I mean, his actions are not simply reprehensible in our modern eyes, but we see that Samuel, the narrator, narrates this in such a way that we have no good reason to doubt that the author's own, we have no good reason to doubt Samuel's own highly critical view of this guy. His words are powerful, but untrustworthy. He deceives, manipulates, misrepresents, and with one final violent lie, manipulates, as Madam Cynthia says, manipulates the nation into near self-destruction. His self-absorption makes him reckless to the consequences of his words and his actions. This is what we see about this guy.
Rabbi,
Madam Drew.
ooh,
Rabbi.
this is extremely horrible and narcissistic. But I think that in chapter 19, it calls him a Levite, but it never calls him a priest. So you can be of a bloodline, but you can also not be of a certain great character. So this man may have been in the Levitical line, but he was not of priest characteristic. He was just the Levite. And every Levite is not a priest, and every priest is not a Levite. So I think it clearly delineates who this guy is and who this guy isn't.
Yes.
I think what Samuel's doing is that he's using the sons of Levi
Oh.
as priest reference, meaning that because of the sons of Levi, the children of Israel wanted a king because of the way that they were being dishonest when they gave up their offerings at the temple. So he's contrasting that whole Levite picture based on the sons of Eli as well. The dishonesty, how they went about doing things, how they treated women, right? Because the women, when put in the gal, they stayed at the separate house, and when they came out to give their offering, they took advantage of them. So this is like the contrast between Eli, sons of Eli, and this priest here.
Thank you so much. Beautiful, beautiful.
Right.
Mr. Jason.
I think there's something else at play here. I do agree with NSJ how Samuel has set it up to show the purpose of why Israel needed a king.
Yes.
It shows the variety of things that was happening amongst this Levite group whom was entrusted with, the Torah, things of that nature. In Deuteronomy 32, you see all the, some of the things that the Levites were entrusted with. So this also shows that with power comes corruption too.
Yes.
So by you being held to such a high esteem, it also leads to a form of corruption. But the thing is, this shows just how a person's word is trusted
True.
with no verification. And this goes to show you why the Torah tells us that when these people come, these prophets, these priests, and things of that nature come to us, they need to be verified. This is a perfect example of what happens when these things are not verified. They just took the guy's word. Like no verification, no nothing. And then he flexed the Levite card, he flexes the Levite card. It's almost, to me, it just seems like it's almost so that they could believe him more.
Correct. Yes.
Rabbi,
Madame Sonja.
it seemed like the Benjamites did not believe him. They didn't hold him in high esteem. And I'm wondering why did it happen that way? Because obviously he went there expecting to get assistance because he was a Levite, but instead he, was greeted by the mob. And then later on in the text, when they approached the Benjamites refused to give the people who did this up for judgment.
Correct.
So what is it that the Benjamites knew about him?
Oh, let's find out. Very good question. Let's find out right now. So, we've seen his speeches, we've seen his character. Now let's come back to the narrative where we stopped and then see what he reveals to us.
Just before you go on, there's another thing. that I want to ask you, so that if you can add that into your next bit.
Okay.
When he cut up the concubine, he cut up 12 pieces. Yeah?
Yes.
And he said that Israel should have a discussion. Now, there's nothing in there about Benjamin saying anything or getting involved in the discussion. Isn't that an opportunity for Benjamin to say something? So this guy's a joker. That's not what happened. Like, do you know what I mean?
Correct.
I don't understand. Benjamin didn't. It wasn't 11 pieces. It was 12.
Correct. So yes, we'll look. That means that it wasn't everybody in Benjamin who knew about it. So it wasn't everybody in the city as he has said it. But yes, we'll come to that. I've noted it here. Let's come back to our narrative. So now they are traveling. They've come to Gibeah and 15, and they turned aside there to come and lodge in Gibeah. And he came and sat in the thoroughfare of the city. That's the main place where everybody, people will see them. But no one brought them home to lodge. Now, I asked a question here, or I asked a question here when I was doing my notes. Did people interact with him or with them while he was sitting in the town square? And why did they not bring him or them indoors to lodge? Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, it seemed like he went to the main place to set himself up to be viewed by everybody to see, because it seemed like he assumed that somebody would be like, oh, hey, that's like they would get some type of special treatment, like somebody gonna take me in, like he was just sitting on display. So obviously from that, I don't think them people really respected him like that.
Okay.
At all.
Okay. So very good.
And that's how they knew. And that's how they knew that they was there. People was talking. You get what I'm saying? Like,
Correct.
he was posted up in the middle of the village. So everybody on display, nobody was dealing with him. The man come out and take him in. They knew he was there, and they knew where he at, who took him in, and that's why they came straight away to him.
Okay, awesome. We'll come back and answer these questions. While he was there, were people interacting with him? And if they were, or if they were not, but if they were, why did they not bring him indoors to lodge? Okay, put that in your spirit. We'll come to that very shortly. And behold, an old man came from his work out of the field at evening, an elderly man. And the man was from the mountain of Ephraim, and he resided in Gibeah. But the people of the area were Benjamites. So we know that clearly the elderly man is also an outsider, because he's not also from Benjamin, he's from Ephraim. Okay, so I get that he's an outsider. But now, why the designation elderly man, an old man? Put that in your spirit. We have to answer all these questions. I know he's an outsider, but I'm wondering, why does not tell me a man came, from his field, but you tell me an elderly man, an old man. Okay, put that in your spirit as well. We're going to make the text speak to us. So, and behold, an old man came from his work out of the field at evening, and the man was from the mountain of Ephraim, and he resided in Gibeah, but the people of the area were Benjamites. Verse 17, and he raised his eyes and saw the wayfaring man in the thoroughfare of the city, and the old man said, where are you going? And from where do you come? Question. He raised his eyes and saw. What is Samuel doing here?
Rabbi,
Madam Jew.
perhaps he was referencing it was dark, and they had gotten there late, and they had also they looked very different than the rest of the Benjamites. They had a different appearance. But I think raised his eyes means that perhaps it was late in the evening or dusk or close to dark, and he had to put your hand up over your eyes to shade your, you know, how you shade your eyes.
Correct.
And then he saw them, and that they looked very, very, they looked like outsiders, and they looked like him, looking like something he had seen prior. Just like you could recognize that other Nigerian man,
Yeah.
he could recognize another man from a prior. They did not look like Benjamites.
Awesome. Okay. Very good. That's
This
correct.
is
But
this,
there is something else.
this is what I get. I get that this story is about Eli and his son. The old man is Eli. The priest is his son. The people are the people of Israel, of the 12 tribes. And the way that Eli treated the woman of, of Israel, that's what I get on this tape.
Okay.
That Samuel was taking this part and he's using the children of Israel, Eli and the son of Eli, and the mistreatment of how Eli mistreated the women. And Eli didn't say anything about it. That's my take.
Okay, beautiful, beautiful, nice. He raised his eyes and saw. He lifted up his eyes and saw. What is Samuel doing? Just that phrase. Just that phrase. What you said is correct, but there's something you're missing. He raised his eyes.
This old man knew him. He was whoever this traveler was. He was known to the old man.
Okay, awesome. Let's use one of the many tools that we use in studying Tanakh. He raised his eyes.
He's making reference to something in the past. I just can't remember.
Come on, remember it. Remember it. Remember it.
Was it when Joseph's father saw?
No, go back. Go back.
Oh wow.
He raised his eyes and saw. It brings me chills.
Isaac? Abraham? I think Isaac. Was it Isaac?
Yeah, I give you 80%. Say that again. Someone just spoke.
Abraham and Lot.
Abraham and Lot. Genesis 18. Look at the contrast.
I think it was Laban.
Laban. Okay. But now look at the contrast. This man lifted up his eyes and saw. He raised his eyes and saw. What is the context here? What is going to happen? Hospitality, right? Yeah. Correct? Okay. How many people did he see when he raised his eyes and saw the old man?
3. Saw 3 people.
3.
Like Abraham.
Oh, let's go there. Genesis 18. So now look at what Samuel is doing. Now Yah appeared to him in the plains of Mamre, and he was sitting at the entrance of the tent when the day was hot. And he lifted up his eyes and saw. The moment I read that in Judges 19, I know what Samuel is doing. This is a story about hospitality. He's referencing Abraham. So the moment I read that, I am expecting this is going to be beautiful. This man may be Abraham, not Abraham in flesh and blood, but he represents Abraham. He's going to play the role of Abraham. Look at it carefully. And behold, 3 men were standing beside him. When the old man, the elderly man, came from the field and he lifted up his eyes, he would see 3 people, 2 men and a woman. The Levite, the concubine, and then the servant. And he saw, and he ran towards them from the entrance of the tent, and he prostrated himself to the ground. And he said, "My lords, if only I have found favor in your eyes, please do not pass on from beside your servant. Please let a little water be taken, and bathe your feet, and recline under the trees, and I will take a morsel of bread, and sustain your hearts. Afterwards, you shall pass on, because you have passed by your servant." Look at Abraham's demeanor in offering hospitality. Let's come to our text. And he raised his eyes and saw the wayfaring man in the thoroughfare of the city. Listen to the man's speech. And the old man said, where are you going, and from where do you come? My question here is this a question of concern or hospitable interrogation?
Concern.
Concern. He's not saying, oh, where are you going? Come in. No. Abraham did not ask the three men where they were going. He had no concern there. He didn't ask them. He just said that he saw them, they needed hospitality. He was ready to bring them in. He didn't pose a question to them to ask them where they were going, where you're coming from. The man is doing this because he has some concern. Put that in your spirit. What would his concern be? Let me come back. What do you think his concern is?
Rabbi.
Mr. Vincent.
Because he know, because it's just, because he know that it's hot there for somebody that's not from there.
Correct.
He know once he's seen him, he like, hey, that's just like I said earlier, when you around somewhere you don't normally see this person over there. The reason why you don't normally see them is because it's hot over there.
Yeah.
So that's why he was concerned. Like, this looked like trouble, and you in the middle of the city.
True. Yeah.
In the open.
Mm-hmm.
Rabbi,
Mr. Jason, go ahead.
it's also the time in which he's traveling.
True.
This old man as they say the freaks come out at night. There's a little song and everything, but he knows these people are here.
Yes.
So him coming into town, you know what I mean? It presents issues. Like, this is not the place that you want to be traveling at this time of day.
Correct. So it looks like the servants knew that, the elderly man knew that, but this Levi did not know. Go ahead, Madam Cynthia.
The other thing is that I think he worked out they've been there for a little while, and he's also wondering why no one's made any offers. You know what I'm saying? Because I would be like, well, I would ask those questions because I want to know why you're not like getting some kind of offers.
True.
Like, what do you? That's what I'll be thinking, because Israel knows about the hospitality and how it rolls. Do you know what I'm saying? That the old man's been living there for quite a while, and he's just curious and concerned why no one's giving you offers. Is there something that I'm missing here?
Okay.
So he's trying to find out what's going on.
Correct. Okay. Awesome. Yes, Mr. Vincent.
Yeah, real quick. The servant knew that too, though.
He did.
The servant, see, that's the thing when the old man, he's an old man, so he, he's cool with them. What we would call a ghetto pass.
Correct.
Yes. So he got a status there already because he has had some time there. So he knows these people, he knows the area, because that's how he was able to come out and say, my brothers, listen, no, on me. That's what he's saying, for me. Don't do, he here with me. Can you not do this?
Correct. Yes.
And the servant, he knew. He's like, yo, let's go here. And nah, we gonna go to where my people is, because all I gotta do is post up in the city and somebody gonna take us in.
Correct.
Rabbi.
Yes, Mr. Jew.
The old man represents wisdom. I believe. You know what I'm saying? He represents understanding. He represents, because he have experience.
Yes.
Because that's, he said, that's the reason why he said old man. Because I
Correct.
guess I'm
Thank you.
assuming in African culture, you know what I'm saying, is
Thank
that
you.
they're the libraries, and they have a lot of wisdom, have a lot of information, have a lot of knowledge, have a lot of experience in life. So I think the old man represents wisdom. That's I think why they call him the old man.
Awesome. Awesome. You're 100% correct. With that thought, let's see something here. The old man comes and he poses a question to him. First question, where are you going to? Second question, from where do you come from? Two questions he asked. Where are you going to? From where do you come from? His answer, and he said to him, we are passing from Bethlehem of Judah to the edge of the mountain of Ephraim. From there am I. That is where he is. He lives. That's where he comes from. And I went unto Bethlehem of Judah, and I am going to the house of Yah, and no one takes me home. What does he do here, the Levite?
He makes it like it's a disrespect to Yah, what they're doing, rather than to him.
Okay. But look at the two speeches. What did he do? I ask you two questions.
Somehow, in those two questions, it seems to me. I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Madam Digis.
Yeah, you go, honey. I'll wait.
Okay, I was just thinking that the answer to those questions explains why no one took him in.
Beautiful.
And the reason for those questions is to determine if he should take him in or not.
Awesome. Beautiful. I agree. His answers to the question is the reason why no one takes him in. I would explain that very shortly. Very good. Look at the question. Look at the questions and then his answers. What's off? What is off?
Rabbi, I'm sorry. It seemed like he double talking.
He does. He gives too much information he's not asked. True. Yes. But it's something. There's something unique. Go ahead, Madam Edna.
I think self-pity. He's pitying himself.
He's pitying himself. Okay, yeah, that's there.
I think what it is that Brother Gaza, that he says that really gets to me, right? Is that because I'm passing from Bethlehem to Judah, right?
Yes.
And that he doesn't. So what do you mean you're passing? We're just wandering around with no purpose. What is it? A walk?
Correct.
And then come back like you're going for a walk. That's how you make that silly.
Correct.
Right?
Yes.
And then he didn't tell you that actually my concubine left me. Yeah, I'm trying to get a legacy, right? But I didn't tell him I took a concubine. You know, this whole drama with him. This pure drama. He didn't give that information, but he's saying that he's almost making it kind of casual. Like I was passing through Bethlehem, you know, and Bethlehem is just like Bethlehem is not like 5 minutes down the road, dude. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then he just goes to like, and I'm just going to the house of the Lord. But you weren't, with the Mount of Ephraim is where the house of the Lord was. So you're coming, you went away from there, now you're going to the house.
You're going
It doesn't make sense.
Yes, Mr. Chauncey answered the question. Go ahead, who is it? Was it Madam Edna?
Rabbi?
Yes, Madam Massey. Madam Massey, go ahead.
Where are you going? And he tells him where he's from.
Correct.
And then he says, where you come from, and he tells him where he's going.
Yes.
So he answered the questions out of order.
Correct. Mr. Chauncey just put it in the chat. Wait a second. He answered the second question first. Wait, Where are you going? Tell me where are you going? And then where are you coming from? They ask you two questions. This is how Solomon solves the dilemma of the women, of the prostitutes, who came with one baby dead and one alive, and he wanted to cut them up. He listened to what they both said, and one person said, "The dead child is mine," and then the living child is no, the living child is mine, the dead one is yours. The other one puts the dead child first and the living child second. Solomon, upon hearing how she phrases her words, knew exactly that the dead child was the child that was dead belonged to this particular woman, because you say what is on your heart first. That is how Solomon deciphers it. He repeats their speech back to them. He said, this one says, the person quotes the living child first before the dead. This one says, she quotes the dead child before the living. So what is upon your heart is what you say. Is this man going to Shiloh? Based on his answer, is he going to Shiloh?
Rabbi?
When I'm no. Mr. Vincent, sorry.
Yeah, no, I don't. He can't decipher where he going, because if somebody asks, "Where are you going to?" I'd have said, "The house of the Lord." Where you coming from? Exactly where I'm from. Not talking like Master Yoda, because I feel like after that how he had all that from there. Am I?
Correct. He's going home.
The question first.
Yeah. He answers number 2 first because that is what is on his heart. He's going home. It's simple 2 questions. But what is on his heart? He's going home. We know he's not going to Shiloh. He puts in the Shiloh there so that he would look more pious, so that he would get. His chances will be higher to have somebody give him accommodation. So I am going to Shiloh. This clause should make a lot of people want to take him in. So why did that not happen? This is where the story turns. He's throwing a card that on a good day would have the whole city want to host him. People will fight to say, come and let me show you hospitality. He knows it. That is why he throws in that card. But it doesn't work. Rather, they want to rape him. Why is that? Let's follow NSJ. What is happening in Shiloh? Remember, Samuel is writing. Yes, Mr. Vincent.
Something that you saying, what's happening at the house of the Lord?
Yes.
Something, I think something where he should have already been there.
Eli.
Okay. Eli. Let's go to 1 Samuel 2. Let's read it. Let me make this disclaimer. I'm not saying that Eli was the person or he's not. I'm not saying that. I'm showing you what was going on in Shiloh, that the sons of Eli came on the stage and may have continued it. What is going on in Shiloh? What do we have? The person writing is Samuel, and he's going to write Judges and Samuel, and he's using those 2 stories to tell us. And Elkanah went to Ramah to his house, and the child was 7 years before Eli the priest. And Eli's sons, unscrupulous men, knew not Yah. Wait a second. They are Levites. Sorry, that is a mistake. They are priests. The Levites and the priests are different. The Levites are the servants to the priests. Hophni and Phinehas, they are priests. The text is telling us they knew not Yah. How is that possible? And this Levite, he doesn't know Yah. I can tell you 100%. The one we're reading about in Judges 19. He doesn't know Yah. Well, he doesn't seem to be the only one. The priests, Eli's sons, also do not know Yah, according to the text. And this was the due of the priests from the people. Whenever any man would slaughter a sacrifice, the servant of the priest, which is the Levite, would come when one cooked the flesh with a 3-pronged fork in his hand, and he will thrust into the fire pot, or into the pot, or into the cauldron, or into the pan. Everything which the fork would pick up, the priest would take therewith. So would they do to all Israel who came there in Shiloh. Also, before they would make the fat smoke, and the servant of the priest, the Levite, would come and would say to the man who slaughtered, give meat to roast for the priest, and he will not take from you cooked meat, but raw. And if the man said to him, let them make the fat smoke now, because the fat is what they're going to smoke, and Yah is going to smell a sweet aroma. Let them make. I know you want meat. Let Yah get his part. Let them make the fat smoke now, and then take for yourself as your soul desires. Even take my portion. I don't care. But let Yah get his first. That is why I took this trek. I made this 1-week trek to come to Shiloh to sacrifice to Yah. And he would say, no. But now you shall give. And if not, I shall take by force. I'm going to read that and I'll ask you a question. He says, but now. He says, no. But now you shall give. And if not, he says, I shall take by force. Question. Give me one word. What were the sons of Eli, which is the priests, and the Levites, the servants? What were they doing?
Rabbi,
Mr. Vincent.
like strong arm extortion and taking from the they was taking what was Yah's, right? They would say they wanted the raw meat. They was like some extortionists. They was really doing some wicked. They was really being wicked.
Okay, that's not the word I'm looking for. I'm looking for one word.
Rabbi.
Mr. Jason.
God and the people.
No, one word, Mr. Jason.
Rabbi, they're not showing hospitality. This is what happened. It seems similar. The same thing happened in Sodom and Gomorrah with Abraham. When the men went down, the last story that we just came across, there seems to be a hospitality issue there.
Okay, give me one word. What
They're
are they doing?
They were just like, they were raping them.
They were,
like,
repeat that again. They're doing what?
Raping.
They were raping Israel and they were raping Yah. Don't forget that. No, but now I shall, let's go back. No, but now you shall give. If not, I shall take by force. When somebody takes something by force, that doesn't belong to them. That is not given to them. What are they doing? They are raping. That is rape. And the text tells us And the sin of the lads was great before Yah, for the men despised the offering of Yah. The men here are the people of Israel, because of how these Levites and priests were raping them. They did not come to Shiloh during the feast days. When my commentary on the book of 1 Samuel comes out, I explain all these things in there. No one was going to Shiloh to bring sacrifices because you get raped by these priests.
But Brother Basil, this is why I'm thinking Eli then knew. That's why he was like, yeah, when Samuel said, he said, yeah, let God do what he does. Like,
correct. So let's not. I doubt it was Eli.
No, but I mean, like,
I'm being nice to him. I doubt it was Eli, because the text refused to mention names in Judges 19. So now let's come back to our text. Remember, the Levites were raping the people when they came to Shiloh. Okay. The guy comes to Gibeah. He is thinking that having his own provisions will encourage the act of hospitality from the locals. He's thinking that playing the Levite card, playing the Shiloh card, would give him more opportunities for hospitality. But that is not the case. The elderly man comes with concerns, asked him, where are you going? Where are you from? He answers. And then he tells him, okay, peace be upon you. Peace be to you. If this is going to be hospitality, you cannot tell me what you have and what you don't have. That is not hospitality. Yeah, you have all these things, but you have nowhere to live. Nobody is hosting you. There might be, or there must be, a reason. Let's follow the story. And he brought him into the house and gave fodder to the donkeys. And they washed their feet, ate and drank, as they were enjoying themselves. And behold, the men of the city, men of wickedness, that is Belial. I'm translating Belial because it's a compound word. You know, these are people that there is nothing positive about them, nothing good about them, and no redeeming value. They're worthless. That's why the word Belial is usually in the Tanakh is used for idols, idol worship. Okay, so this is just a group of people. They surrounded the house and were beaten at the door, and they spoke to the man, the elderly master of the house, this man of wisdom, this man who knows history, this man who knows the past, saying, bring out the man that came into your house, so that we may be intimate with him. Why are the people asking to bring this man so they can rape him?
Rabbi?
Mr. Vincent.
Because of what's happening in Shiloh, right?
Correct.
And he's one of them. So
correct.
They're trying to get some justice.
Yes. They're not homosexuals. You are raping us in Shiloh. You. It may not be you, but you're part of the Levitical group.
Rabbi, can I say something real quick?
Mr. Drew, go ahead.
When the guy has all those provisions, that's from what he stole from the other people. Yeah, make it clear. I got all this stuff. Yeah, you stole it from all these other people. That's why you got the stuff. Yeah, we over here broke and stinking, but you over here sitting fat and pretty and expect somebody to take you in your house. But you done got us. So yeah, we got you, man. We got something for you. We're gonna do something for you. Yeah, I got you.
You know, they're not homosexuals. How many men came into that house?
Three men.
Okay.
Two of them, it was him, his servant, and his wife. Or his
Okay.
concubine.
So the strangers were two men, right? The Levite and then the servant. If these guys were homosexual, what would they have demanded?
Give me both.
Give me both of them. No, they don't want the servant. He's not a Levite. They want the guy who's been raping them in Shiloh. When you go to Genesis, they asked for the people who came, the angels. This guy, they just want that man. How do they know he's a Levite?
He told them.
He told them. Correct. When he's sitting there waiting for hospitality, he's playing the Levite card and talking about Shiloh.
Rabbi?
Madam Bridget.
Hello, yes. I was thinking about this wise old man, and the answer that the Levite gave him about where he was coming from and where he was going. And as you had just suggested with Solomon and determining the true mother of this dead child, it seems that this wise old man probably understood several things with the way in which the Levite answered and what he said. The first being that he wasn't telling the truth about where he was going, and that he probably perceived that he was trying to get someone to take him in with that answer as to where he was going, based on the fact that he didn't answer the questions in the order that he chose to give it to him. And that probably helped him to determine, okay, let me take this guy, and he really doesn't know what he's saying to these people. And he needs some help here. And probably the pain of knowing when these men came to get retribution on this Levite, he probably realized at that time, the old man that is, that he in fact is not going where he's telling y'all he's going.
Yes.
And probably felt sorrowful that this man, this Levite, has put himself in this position based on a lie, whereas if he had told the truth, he might have been better off.
Yep. I mean, if you read the story carefully, you see how it evolves. These guys are not looking for the two men because they're attractive, because they came. No. They want this particular man, the Levite, because they want to serve justice. When our people come to Shiloh, this is how you treat them. And these are young men, so they are angry. They don't go to Shiloh any longer. They don't want to have anything to do with Yah because of how their leaders are acting. That is the Levites, the priests. So they come and they demand for him, the Levite. We're going to be intimate with him. We're going to know him. We're going to rape him. Justice.
Rabbi.
Mr. Vincent.
Yeah, because in some sense, I see when they say so that we could be intimate with him, is like they, want to like just physically jump on him, not even necessarily, rape, like, you know what I'm saying? Like that's really like strong talk. Like tell them to come outside because we trying to get a little close.
Correct. Listen, the most intimate part of their journey to Shiloh was when the person brought their sacrifice to Yah. That is the most intimate part of it.
Yeah.
It's when they brought it and it's burnt, and then the smoke goes up and Yah receives it. That is intimacy.
Yeah.
And you are there desecrating such private encounters.
Rabbi,
Mr. Jason.
it sounds like the church.
Mr. Jason.
I'm sorry. I'm not trying to offend anybody. But This just lets us know why church doesn't work. They tried it in Shiloh, and look what happened, right? Got to do something new, man. It just don't work. The church structure don't work. You come in, you bring in your offering to these people. This makes so much sense. Why in Malachi, y'all was so
correct
with the priests. This makes so much sense. He like, look what y'all done did. Y'all done messed up my whole order. Ooh. Yeah. I see why he was angry. So this begs a different question. With behavior like this from the leadership, I would go worship other gods too.
Mm-hmm. I'll go to the Jebusite and bow down to the idols, at least. They don't.
This is about, Rabbi, this just opened up something else I was studying. Oh my gosh. That's why we went to idolatry. It was because of the priesthood.
Okay,
right,
now.
let me mute my mic, because I'll be talking later.
Now, this is the moment of truth.
Rabbi, real quick.
Go ahead, Mr. Vincent.
Yeah, that opened up a whole can of worms for me too, brother Jason. Because the Most High is definitely talking strong about the priests, even all through with the prophets and everything in Jeremiah and their corruption. And somebody rather would bow down to an idol that's not going to rob them.
Correct. Yep.
Wow.
Okay, I have 14 more minutes. Let's see if we can.
MB Massey said something really powerful.
Yeah, I'm going to answer that question right now.
That one is like, I can write fast enough.
Yes. Mr. Drew says this man is wisdom. This man is elderly. He knows history. He knows the past. We've identified him that he may be Abraham, because they said he lifted up his eyes. Same words used for Abraham. Same number of people that we saw in Abraham's narrative. What would have been your move if you were this elderly man? Think about it carefully before you speak. He's called elderly for a reason. He's sitting at home, giving hospitality to 3 people. He hears knocks banging on his door. They come and then they say, give us the man, we're going to know him. And you're going to speak. Maybe the most important speech in your life. 3 people's life depend on you. What would you have said? Don't answer it casually. Think about it. What would one have said? Everything hangs on him at this moment. Everything. Who lives, who dies, who gets molested hangs on an Abraham figure here.
It's like he's interceding for the guy. He gave him hospitality, and if I look at it in the context of what you talked about, hospitality and charity, it fits into that. But also, I think it also fits into, now I get why the virgin woman was given, because when I read Massey's comment about...
Yes, focus on the question. What would you say? I'm expecting to speak. What would you say? Everything hangs on you.
Oh.
Because of time, let me answer. Let's wrap this up. The man is called elderly because he knows and he's aware of the story of Sodom. We see how Samuel goes back to the story of Sodom to tell us, hey, reader, pay attention. Open Genesis 18 and 19. and read along. I'm taking for granted that you studied that. You know it to the T. What speech does he give? This is what he says. And the man, the master of the house, went out to them and said to them, "No, my brothers, do not do so wickedly now. Since this man has come into my house, do not commit this disgraceful deed. Here is my virgin daughter and his concubine. I will bring them out now, and you should afflict them, and do with them as you please. But to this man, do not do this disgraceful act." Lord have mercy. He knew he had to speak to them, so he gave a speech. Whose speech did our wise man borrow?
Lot.
Oh boy. This is a speech of your life. Everything hangs on you, our wise man. He knows the narrative of Sodom. He knows the past. He knows Torah. And he freezes. He cannot think right. He's introduced as Abraham. But he gives Lot's speech.
Oh God.
In Sodom, Lot said, they had not, the text says, they had not yet lain down. We are told, as they were enjoying themselves in Gibeah. And the men of the city, we are told in Gibeah, behold the men of the city. The men of Sodom and Lot, sons of Belial. They surrounded against the house. They surrounded the house and were beaten at the door in Gibeah. And they called to Lot, saying to him, and they spoke to the man, the elderly man of the house, saying, "Where are the men that came to you this night? Bring them out so that we might know them." The same thing in Gibeah. Bring out the man that came into your house so that we'll be intimate with them. And Lot went out to the door and he shut the door behind him and said to them, the man did the same thing. The master of the house went out to them and said to them, "Please do not do evil, my brothers." He says the same thing. "No, my brothers, do not do so wickedly now." Lot says, "Behold, I have 2 daughters who have not known a man yet." The man says, "Here is my virgin daughter and his concubine. Please let me bring them out to you," Lot says. The man says, "I will bring them out now." And he tells them to do according to the good in your eyes. And the man says, "Afflict them and do with them as you please." Lot says, "Only do not do a thing to these men." Verse 12, "But to this man do not do this disgraceful act." He borrows the speech of Lot. This is a man who started as Abraham. He ends up as Lot. Everything is hanging on this angel. Look at Genesis 19. "And as the dawn rose, the angels pressed Lot, saying," they were telling Lot, "Get up, take your wife and your daughters who are here, lest you perish because of the iniquities of the city." But Lot tarried. Lot doesn't want to go. And the men took hold. Madam Drew, your took is going to play a role here. The men took hold of his hand, Lot, and his wife's hand, and the hand of his 2 daughters, out of Yah's pity for Lot. And they took him out and placed him outside the city. out of pity for Lot, the angels grabbed him and his family and took him out and placed him outside the city. Lot did not want to go. Judges 19. And the man grabbed his concubine. What is Samuel trying to tell us without telling us? Just as Lot was refusing to go, this woman resisted. She tarried. She struggled. She pleaded. But her angel grabbed her and fed her to the mob. The Levites are servants, just as angels are servants. Abraham is in the narrative. Lot is in the narrative. The angels are in the narrative. Grabbed her. He didn't say took, grabbed her. We don't hear her screams. We don't see the scratches that she inflicted on his arms or his face. Her screaming is silenced. And he throws her to the wolves. This elderly man should have been like Judah. When everything was exposed, when Joseph said, "I'm taking Benjamin," Judah approached and he said, "If I may, I want to speak something into your ears." And Judah gave an account, a historical account, everything that took place till then. And Joseph started weeping. This man should have stepped out and said to his crowd in his speech, he calls them my brothers. Where is it? Calls them my brothers. Bring it up. As I get ready to run out, he says, "No, my brothers, do not do so wickedly now. This is what happened in Sodom." This is when you give the history lesson. This is when you tell them what happened in Sodom. This is when you remind them of Sodom. You don't give Lord's speech. If you do this, Yah will destroy all of us like he destroyed Sodom. But no one was teaching these youths. No one. And our wise man started off as Abraham and he ended off as Lot. What have we seen? We have a Levite who's a liar, know your loyalties, nonchalant, lacks compassion and remorse. Thank you, Madam Marie. I'm always out of here. And two, you have an elder who couldn't educate the youth and judge them. When these two things combined, you have a failed society. That is why when Samuel took the stage, the text tells us, and Samuel judged Israel all the days of his life. And from year to year he would set forth and go around to Bethel and Gilgal and Mizpah, and he would judge Israel in all these places. He went out to the people and taught them Torah and judged them and answered their question. Why? You cannot forget the past because it repeats itself. If this elderly man was Abraham, we wouldn't have had these crises. If it were Samuel, we wouldn't have had this crisis. If it were Moshe, we wouldn't have had this crisis because he would educate them. He may not have even come to this because they would remember their Torah lessons. So when we left Egypt, Yah said, teach it to your children. Don't let them forget. Reenact it every year. So Samuel is compared to Moshe and Aaron combined because he did both of their works. So Samuel uses the speech of all our characters to subvert or uphold their characterization, their report, how he portrays them. The force of this is to cast doubt upon his integrity or vice versa. He uses speech to either cast integrity on the individual in the text or vice versa. This is what is happening in the... One second. This is what is happening in the narrative. We haven't heard... I'll land very soon. We haven't heard. We've seen everyone speak, whether through silence or words. Next week, we're going to give the concubine the stage. And we're going to hear from her own voice or words. She is going to speak to us. We're going to dissect the text. What is Samuel saying? Samuel gives her the biggest voice. You wouldn't notice that if you don't read it right. What would this woman tell us next week? Madam Marie, can you take over? Send me a text when the discussions are over, and then I would log out. I'm sorry, I have to run out for my appointment. So I would log in when I'm driving, but I can only listen in. I cannot answer questions. Okay, so over to you.
The floor is open to anyone who wants to continue the discussion.
It feels like it's like that now. Like I feel like that's my. It's like when I say like this now, I feel like Israel doesn't know stuff, and history is reliving itself. The cycle is going on, and we basically need like that's what's happening. We need a Samuel, that sort of thing. That's what I'm seeing.
Cynthia,
Hello, Jason. I can't hear you. Hello.
Jason, I think you're muted.
Can y'all hear me now?
I can hear you now.
All right, okay. I had to fix my mic. I think it's a little bit of the opposite nowadays. I think that because Torah is readily available, like you can learn the Torah a lot differently than you could back in our ancestor days. That it should be taught at home. Like we have a main focus overall, like Rabbi teaches us on the weekend, and then during the week, I'm teaching the material at home. So I think it's a lot better now than when it was where, Moses was saying, you read it every 7 years in front of all of the people, and then you had to go to just the leaders in order to get Torah, which we see were corrupt. But now we can actually have that and learn that on our own today. So I think that we learn it and then become the teacher, the rabbi in our house to be able to help those who are around us. So I think it's a little bit better.
Yeah, I think what it is, I get what you're saying, Jason, and I think those that have like the time and the inclination and the motivation to do that, I know that you're really motivated and stuff like that, and it's brilliant. But I'm just also thinking about those that haven't got that kind of motivation, and at the end of it, they are, it's not, they've got a lot going on. So it wasn't just left to the parents or the families to do it. Samuel was going around and actually explaining things and stuff like that. I'm grateful for Brother Basil's class. And other things, like I said, I've been reading, and I just read Torah stuff. I read just like all different types of books just to get some insight, and understanding. So yeah, we've got access, and it's just, I think maybe it might be the time might be a problem, the motivation might be a problem, and there's a lot of dysfunction in the family. So a lot of people not even getting the basic foundation of a family to even have an opportunity to be taught. So I don't know.
I'm just taking the opposite approach right now because we know all those factors are there. So, like, for example, a family, there's a couple families, me and a couple people, we get together throughout the Shabbat day. So either it's Friday sundown, we'll do Saturday morning, we'll do Saturday evening. But what we'll do is we'll get together and we'll just study Torah, like we'll study the text. We've been laying the foundation the last month and a half, 2 months, with just the 10 words for our kids and things of that nature, and going over those things and stuff like that. So you just gotta, you have to find, it shouldn't be this way, you know what I mean? And also too, we were all in the land at the time too, so it's easier for Samuel to travel to the people when the people are in the place where Samuel can get to. But now, I'm in the United States, you have people in Jamaica, you have people in Europe, we're all over the place. So it's tough for one person to be able to get around and do that for everything. But I think if we build small villages and have one main base, because when I read the text, the Torah was meant to be taught at home. That's just what I get from it. Even with the earlier feast, a lot of the feasts were done in the house when you couldn't get to the place of where God was going to put his name. So you could do those things at the house. So, how do we rebuild those pre-exilic conditions? How do we continue to go through those things with the pre-exilic customs? And I think the way of doing that is building it locally and just building from there.
Shabbat shalom, everyone. I like what everyone is saying. I just want to give my 2 cents on it. I feel as though we need to have Samuels in different parts of the diaspora, where See, the issue is this. So Samuel is judging the people. Now, in today's society, when one comes off as if they are judging the person who is being judged, they can take it a few ways. One of the ways they may say, but you're judging me, and then they also want to find some dirt on that person so that they can tarnish that person's name. Until we find a way to value a person who is like a Samuel and respect that person instead of trying to find dirt on the person, or suppose there is dirt on the person, do you then stop listening to the person because who is, blameless, right? So I think that's one of the things, and sometimes it's the understanding as well. Like I met a young man last year, and he said, he's got to get new friends or whatever. His friends are hating on him because he's got his stimulus money, and he said when he's like his friends they got higher paying jobs and things of that nature, and he said, see now he's got like a TV, he's got all this luxurious stuff, and his friends were telling him, don't buy those things, save the money, put it in a business, do it. And he said, see, they don't want to see me win, so they're judging him. He looks at it as if they're judging him because he wants to, quote unquote, be winning by buying TVs and things of that nature. So that means that we value certain things that we shouldn't value. We should value the teachings that are coming from somebody, so some of his friends, whether they're older or whatnot, and say, you know what, you're right. I don't need expensive TV or things of that nature right now. I should do something else. But we're living in a society today where instead of us valuing those things, that we should be valuing.
Oh, Marvin, that's a shame. You're cracking up, Marvin. Marvin, you're cracking up. Can't hear you.
Thanks.
You know what, guys? I do agree with Marvin. I think that is one of probably our biggest challenge as a people. I do think that if somebody in our midst, people that we know, do say some, we want to make it out like it's some kind of, like, I know there's been a very popular saying of no one can judge me but God and stuff like that. Or if somebody says something that doesn't please your ears, there is oh no, I think she wants to become the top dog, or he wants to become this. That's not the case. It could just be something that needs to be said to you that you need to just take a stock and get on with it and work it through. But you have to find something negative, or there's a negative thing as to why that person is doing what they're doing. It could just be they're just trying to help you out, or they just feel inspired to speak to you and tell you stuff that is for your good. And I know that sometimes things that I said that are for our good, we don't always like. So I understand what Mr. Marvin is saying. That is we do need Samuels around, but I don't know if as a community and as a nation we are ready for little Samuels around. Do you know what I'm saying? And that's what makes me sad, because I think when we think about Samuel's very clear, very, very clear. When he walked up to Saul, and Saul was like, oh, I've done this. He's like, dude, what's this barn of sheep I hear? You rebel. And it was clear. It wasn't combined. I don't know if we're ready for that in our community. freaking hack it.
Yeah, so
Cynthia, I do agree with you. And I think another problem is when you're talking about people being like Samuel and judging. I know personally, my biggest, I would be reluctant to have someone judge me because there are a lot of people now that do that. And then you look at, especially religious leaders, right? And you look at them like, who are you to judge? You have this congregation, yes, and you're in the pulpit and you speak to people, but then you look at them like you got a personal jet, you live like, for example, Joel Osteen. Like I look at him and there's no way I could look at a leader of his status or a religious person of his status as like a Samuel. Because to me, they're not godly. You know what I mean?
Aisha, I get your point, but you know what the problem would be? If you was at the time, I don't know if we were in the time of Samuel, we'd do the same. Because Samuel's kids were rowdy. You don't look at his kids and dude, you're coming to tell me. But look at your kids. Because part of the reason why
I mean, just them themselves, even before we get to their kids. I think we definitely need Samuels, but I think the hardest part would be like trying to figure out who could fill those shoes. You have to be a righteous person. And I look at so many religious leaders in our churches, especially, and they are not righteous at all. They are like the most wicked ones. And just how could we determine who would be the Samuel? That's my question. How could we determine that?
And in our determination, we also have to bear in mind that righteousness does not always mean perfection. So we have to have that balance because we're all living in this world of duality and we're not perfect ourselves. So when we go to look at somebody's life who is judging us, we have to be quite discerning and not have an expectation that's unrealistic.
I think that's a really good point.
Most of our relationships, most of our understanding and upbringing comes from an idea of perfection that's not even biblical. Number one, the word in Hebrew that means perfect, it simply means to be mature. That's all it means. It just means
that's what I
literally,
see
it
a
just
lot of
means
them
to be mature. That's it. So like in any situation you have, just make the best decision. That decision becomes the level of maturity. Maturity comes from if you make a bad decision, how do I grow from it? So when the Torah, even Yeshua said this, just be perfect, because your Father in heaven is perfect. He was quoting Deuteronomy. But the thing is that perfection just means to be mature, just to make the best decision, right? So the issue that we have is, and this is what I found from just the people that I've been around, so this is not personally towards anybody, and I find this like super important. Most people don't know Torah. So you become pastor dependent. When you don't know the scriptures, when you don't know how to search them, when you don't know how to go back and read the Hebrew, when you don't know how to parse the text, these things, you become pastor dependent. So when you become pastor dependent and that pastor lets you down because that pastor is not doing the things that he's supposed to be doing either, we then turn our attention to the idea of Samuel. Samuel was good in his day, but once again, everybody did not have access to Torah. So when you think of Samuel, when you think of these prophets and things of that nature, everybody didn't have an Isaiah scroll. You had to go to the temple to get that. You kind of see what I'm saying? Like, it wasn't readily available. Right now, you can pick up your phone right now and get 400 different translations of the text. 400 of them, easily at the tip of your finger. They didn't have this. So I think the onus is on us to learn the text, learn the language, and then you can't be deceived. So when you are having conversations with pastors, this is how come when I study and somebody tell me something, I'd be like, well, that's not true. Because I know the language. I study the Hebrew. So when you study the language, things become
easier for you to be able to interpret and for you to be able to understand. Like a very common misconception. It's very common, right? When the Bible talks about Nephilims, if you read it in English, you think that these giants were walking around. But when you actually study the Hebrew, the word that's used for and he took is synonymous with violence and rape. It's synonymous. So these Ben Elohims, these sons of God, that the Romans translated as these angelic beings, when you actually look at the context, it's just talking about men of power. So there's this idea of power struggle from the very beginning. Guys, like, I don't want this type of, I don't want people having this type of control where they were just taking the women and doing whatever they want to do with them. But see, you won't know that until you know the language. So you got to know the language. And then when you know the language, then the text becomes easier for you to understand. So the onus is on us. Like, I took the onus on myself to learn because I was tired of coming across stuff that I studied and read one way, and then I talked with my pastor, and the pastor was like, no, well, it don't mean that, it means this. And then the pastor gave some super outstretched spiritual understanding, and I'm like, but the text is simple. It's not saying that. This is what it's saying. But you got to do that for yourself. And the reason why is because the people that you are entrusting to give you the information, they're not learning it either.
Mm-hmm. Might I add a thought and a question into the group? Jason, what you're saying, I think is very true, and I think it speaks to why I think we're all here is to, and if we obviously we all study on our own as well the Torah because we want to know the truth for ourselves. And you brought up a lot of very interesting points throughout today, and I wanted to actually, since we're talking about judging and having Samuel's judge us, it speaks of, and you brought up Joel Osteen, Aisha, about the church, and I know, Brother Jason, that you brought up a point earlier about you understand why they turn to idols. And you made the comparison of the Levites being, untrustworthy and raping the people as a parallel to our modern day church, and doing the same thing, fleecing the people. And I want to know if you could elaborate on that a little bit in terms of your thoughts about, turning to idols as a result of the church, and how you can see why that happened and how that happened during the times of the Torah.
Okay, so this is going to be easy to understand, right? Because I want you to put yourself back in our ancestors' time, right? And think of this, right? You are coming off of Mount Sinai, seeing the voice of God vibrate through the fire on the mountain. You saw this. You pass that down to your people, right? You're passing this down to your people, right? You get instructions from Moses. Hey, listen to these Levites because these people are the leaders in which God is going to speak to in order to keep these traditions going, right? So you are automatically trusting the words of the Levite. That is an automatic trust. You're not questioning that. You're trusting them. But then you start to see behaviors from the Levites that don't seem Torah-like. They don't seem Torah-like, all right? They stealing offerings. They're lying. They're raping people. They're doing all of these things that just do not seem like they're actually keeping Torah. Your only obligation, because you are still searching for the Yah in which you saw on the mountain, you still want that experience. So what do? You look for remnants of it in other cultures, and that's what our ancestors did. They looked for the remnants of what they were missing in other cultures. How I know this? Because when you go study the culture of Balaam, you go study it, right? You read the epics of Gilgamesh. If I was to pull it up and read it to you right now, you'll be like, oh my God, it sounds like, and it's older than our Torah, if I was to read it to you, you'll be like, you know what? It sounds like the Bible stole this. So you see these things, you see remnants of Hashem in these other cultures. So you take on their deities, and you don't have the penalty of having to pay in order for you to worship these other deities. They're not charging you outrageous prices for prayers and things of that nature. So you get to see this. So for me, when I look at the outside cultures, I can see why they were running the other deities, because number one, how the priest was treating them, and number two, they didn't have all these requirements that you would have inside of the culture that they were trying to get Yah from. So that's my understanding of it.
Thank you. What would you say to, that's a very good argument, that's a very good argument for leaving, the leaving Yah, essentially, and worshiping other gods. What would you say to why that was wrong now?
Can I just say something? Because they're not looking at it like they're leaving Yah. It's the same as when Moses came down from the mountain and Aaron had said, these are your gods, Israel, who brought you out of Egypt. They're not looking at it like it's a different deity. They're just trying to find a connection to Yah, and they are going to do it through whatever channels they feel like they have access. So I think that's my understanding of what Brother Jason is saying, and that's how I look at it. That they're like, well, if you're gonna take away my sacrifice, remember the sacrifices were money essentially. That's an expensive thing that they're giving up. The cost of a sheep or a goat. So if you're going to charge me all of this extra money and I can't even take it and then celebrate with my family and all of that kind of stuff like that I'm supposed to do, you're taking the intimacy out of it for me, then I'm going to go and get intimacy with Yah somewhere else. Initially at least, they're not looking at it like, oh, okay, I'm going to go and become Buddhist now because I'm vexed with the church. That's not how they're looking at it. They're like, okay, well, I'm going to maybe become Catholic or, like, and
Buddhist.
Let me explain idolatry to you, because I don't think we understand what idolatry was back in like the ancient times. The people that was deeply involved in idolatry were heavy God worshippers. Okay, like when you go back and you look at the things they were doing, okay, they were sacrificing their children because they were trying to please deities. I need you to see the depth and severity of this. They wasn't just doing like they were very serious about the worship of God. So when you see them sacrificing children, Yah says you don't have to do that because I spoke to you personally. But there's other cultures, like when they had people invading them, they would sacrifice their kids because they knew their kids was innocent. And like when you read I've read the Canaanite doctrine, right? So the Canaanites, when they were being invaded, right? Not by Israel, but when they were being invaded, I forgot the name of the nation they were being invaded by. The children were willing to be sacrificed because they were trying to get an answer from Baal. To us, that's an abomination. To the people in which it's occurring to, it was righteous in their eyes. They thought they were doing a righteous thing. But we won't know that because we read the text from our bias. We read it as Israelites. We don't read it as the Canaanites. So when Israel come into contact with these people and they see the things that they're doing, and you look back and you see what's going on in Israel, the rape, the murder, and things of that nature, why would I want to follow Yah when his representation is terrible? This is why people's leaving the church. This is why people's leaving major religions, because the history repeats itself. The same thing the pastors and the leaders were doing in Torah, they're doing it now. That's why there's such a mass exodus. But what they try to cover that up with is, oh, people are leaving, they turning from the faith. No, fool, we tired of you. We just want to live right. We just want righteousness. We want to serve God, and we don't want all these theatrics.
Right.
And that's what they were turning to.
Are you suggesting also or saying that this kind of hypocrisy was not seen with these other religions?
What I'm saying is that the
Do you understand,
price in which you
understand
have
my
to
question?
I do understand what you I do exactly understand what you're saying. The hypocrisy wasn't shown, and also too, people were listen, for a poor person to give up a sheep, it's like the government or the IRS coming after you for $2 million and you work at McDonald's.
Right.
That's the severity. So if I'm giving up a sheep to my God as a sacrifice, and y'all out here playing games,
right?
People, you doing all that, bro? I'm not giving up no more sheep. That's why Malachi, he was like, "Why did you turn the people from me with your harlotry? Like, why did you turned the people from me? Why? Because they doing all types of stuff. Hey, listen, bro, if you give me 2 extra lambs, you can get over here in this prayer line. They were doing that in the text too.
Right.
We even see this in second century temple time, where the priest was like, if you give me an extra cut, I'll go into the holies of holies and say an extra special prayer for you. What?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
And if you give it extra, you get a car park.
Yeah. They were doing crazy stuff.
What was that, Cynthia?
I said, if you give extra, if you give extra money, you get a car park at the church. You know, the extra special car park.
Right, exactly. Next to the pastor.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember that. You get preferential seating. I remember being in the church. If you tithe this, you get preferential seating, bro. I don't want to sit next to your pastor. I know more than your pastor, and I'm not even trying to be funny. Like, it is what it is. Like, this is not why I'm here. But these are the things that go on. And Barton, you asked the question, how do we get caught up in Christianity? Because what you still have to understand is Christianity still have ties to our deity.
Yes, it does.
Yes, it does.
We did not get caught up. We did not get caught up in Christianity because of Jesus Christ. We got caught up in Christianity because in front of Christ is Yah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And also, I think there's a specific denominations that got a lot. I believe that have got a lot of Hebrews. Like I would say that probably the Seventh Adventists would be one of the major areas that had a lot of Hebrews because the Sabbath was still kept. You know, you didn't eat pork, and so while they're Christian, it's a Christian religion, and there's Jesus in that. Like you said, Jason, I think that is where it's exactly what you've said, and also what Cherie has said is that there's a connection that is being sought with God, and whatever channel they can get it, you know, no matter how darkly how darkly the glass may be, you're still getting a little bit of a connection with Yah. Do you know what I'm saying? You're getting that thing, and I think it's a journey, and we grow and we develop. But the only thing is that it's about us improving all the time. Do you know what I'm saying? I think sometimes when we got into that place or got into any type of religion, even if it was Buddhism or Hinduism, we're supposed to stay there. We're supposed to still improve. We're supposed to still chasing after Yah, still looking for Him. Do you know what I'm saying? And that is why in Torah he talks a lot about, he says, like, I get emotional with Yah. I see his emotions sometimes. He says, if you seek me, you shall find me. There's a reason why he says that. If you seek me. Because he knows that he may be in bits of it, but not like there's more. Do you know what I'm saying? And that's why he says things like, come, let's reason together. You know what I mean?
Well, it's so funny you should say that, Cynthia, because it speaks to what Jason was saying earlier about perfection, right? And the maturity, spiritual maturity, and that, you know, you said you keep getting better and better. You know, you may start at a place, but you mature, you perfect to the next level. You become more mature, and you start to see things, and then you start to become more mature. And yes, I do think that the Genesis all starts with seeking for yourself. You know, I remember, I don't know where everyone's background comes from, but I know in my family and I, we were starting to pull out of Christianity. And my father was an ordained minister and all of that. And I remember going to I won't mention the church's name, but a very, very popular church in California. And, you know, I remember just going on, just sort of like to see with my own eyes the hypocrisy. And it was a pastor's anniversary celebration at the church. And for 3 hours straight, some of the top Christian leaders in the world just preached about giving money the entire 3 hours. All they did was preach about giving money to the pastor on his anniversary. And literally tens and tens of thousands of dollars were given in that 3 hour period. And I went to this event, I think, just to finally get an understanding as to why I had to move on to mature to another level outside of the Christian church that I had grown up in.
And that's the thing too, like when you get to a place where you just look at and you start to understand God and things of that nature and you're searching for God, what we don't see is we are at a mature state. We came from the babyologies of Christianity and we started maturing in Torah. We started maturing in our relationship and our search, and it has led us to this point. So we are at a place of perfection. We are at a place of maturity now. And all we're doing is refining the maturity. Okay, this is doctrine that I learned before. It's not true. Let's throw that away. Let's add something else into there. So the thing is, as we continue to grow, we continue to learn. We're just going to get better with what it is that we're doing. Now, I was going to say this earlier when Rabbi was here, but I've been multiple places with multiple rabbis, regardless of color. No one breaks down Torah like Rabbi, period. Bar none. Like it's not even you know how you have like in basketball, like Michael Jordan, and then you have these other basketball players, like they're good, but they're like Rabbi really breaks down the text. And one thing that he doesn't do, which is what I love, is he doesn't bring his interpretation into the text. He lets the Torah answer the Torah. And that's something that I've learned throughout my journey, is that the text will answer for itself. Now, what we have to do is when we're working and ministering with these people that are outside of the Torah, that are in Christianity, coming in, things of that nature, we have to allow them to see Torah. That's the only thing that's going to make them wake up. You can't tell them that they're wrong, because in their heart and in their thinking, they don't believe that they're wrong. But I have people now in my inbox like, yo, you made that post about the text. Can you show that to me? I'm like, yeah, I can show it to you. Why? Because people, when you allow the text to answer itself, it becomes a very different thing. So you're starting to see these people come out of 7-day Adventists and Kojic and things of that nature. You're going to see a mass awakening continue to happen because people are returning to Torah. God's people, the Hebrews, who left during the first century, not first century, but who left during 722 AD, the pre-exilic Israelites, they're starting to return. They're coming back to Torah, and it's time. So you'll see that. We're at a place where Torah is reached the level of maturity, and those people that need to return will. Everybody's not going to return. The Torah says that only a small remnant of Israel will return. So you thinking that 40 million African Americans coming back to Torah? Not happening. Probably 2, probably 3 million, but then God will continue to do the work from there.
I think, Jason, I took what you're saying. I think what it is for me personally, I think I'm not on the wavelength of trying to take anyone from any particular religion, and that's not what you meant, but I'm just talking from my own point of view. What I do for me personally is that I will show you certain things I found, and that's it. I don't expect you to leave. I'm not going to indoctrinate you. I'm not going to have a Bible study with you. I'm not doing none of that with you. Because ultimately the truth is the truth. It's like what Brother Basil said before. The truth stands no matter where you go. And so I allow them to, if they want to ask, like you've done, where I allow them to come and ask questions and whatever, if they want to ask questions. But I'm not going to have a Bible study with you and have these one-minute-ship, like, oh, this is what it says. If you ask me a question, I will answer you and I will give you what I know at that period of time. And I think we have to, for me personally, I just think that I'm when Brother Basil said that we don't do conversions, it resonated with me so much because I never ever felt comfortable about converting people. But for some reason, I'm able to speak to people and they would ask me questions. And from that, we'd have like an intellectual conversation, an esoteric conversation that will lead them on their journey and let them carry on. And I don't have a problem with them not even coming down the pathway that I'm coming. They might decide to stay in Seventh-day Adventism or Jehovah's Witness or whatever religion that may be. But we can still have that type of, we can still have conversations, and they've got to go through their journey. And I think if we, I think that that's really, really important because it's about their time and their seasons and where they're going and where Yah has preordained for them, not preordained, but their journey essentially, and they've got to go through their processes. And so sometimes when we come across resistance and the person not wanting to hear, it's just because they have to go through their journey. They may never get to the point where they will hear you. They never get to the point where they can look at the Torah in the context that we understand it now. But that's just their journey. And I'm okay with that. I can still have Sabbath lunch with you. I can still like have a conversation with you. Because that's not what I'm looking at. The fact that we can reason together. If Yah says that the Almighty God, the one that knows everything, ins and outs, says, come, let us reason together, can say that to me, then I'm able to do that with anybody else. We can reason together, so you have to, you have to necessarily agree or be on the same pathway. I think that's healthy. And I have to say to you guys that I'm looking at, I'm hoping this is how it is for 2021, but this is I'm seeing it like, now I'm starting to understand why Yah's like, sometimes Yah says that some people are not going to make it. And I'm before, I used to think, oh gosh, God, how can you say that? What do you mean? And it's like, now I'm getting it. I'm getting it. Like, I'm not gonna, like, I'm not gonna beat myself over just to kind of get you to do what I think I know Yah's been saying and stuff. I'm gonna just let you discover it. Because if you don't make it, then you don't make it. I'm sorry, but that's just how it is, And it's just a journey. We all have to go. We all have to make choices. Do you know what I'm saying? And you can't beat yourself up over it. And I know it's painful, especially when it's family, people you're close with. It's difficult, but we've got to learn that they still have that sovereignty, that choice that they've got to make, and we can't override it.
Hasten.
Nor does. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I agree with everything that you're saying, and there are two things. One, the scripture that says that Yah is going to separate Israel from Israel is becoming so much more clear to me how that is happening. And the other thing is, people are awakened when they're ready, and Yah does the awakening. So I feel so blessed that that Yah saw fit to wake me up at the time that he did. And I think each of us here have our own stories of how Yah did that. For me, it was very painful because my joy turned to bitterness when I discovered who I was, and I was so excited to share all this newfound knowledge, and especially when I found Rabbi. And I was so excited because I've always loved reading and learning and just sharing, and to have everything basically thrown back in my face. And at one point, I really felt like I was going insane because on one hand, I have this, what I believe to be the truth, and then on the other hand, my parents are against me. Everybody is saying bad things about me. It was just crazy at one point. But now I'm settled in my knowing, and I think you and I talk about this. about knowing what we know and standing in it, especially when other people try to sway you one way or the other, and they try to say things to make you doubt what Yah says. And when things go really bad, and when things aren't working out, seemingly not working out, I just go back to what Yah says. He said this. He says his plan for me is one of success and not failure. And he says he's going to accomplish these things. And Lady Joy shared with me this one scripture in Genesis 28, verse 15, and I have it printed out and posted on my vision board, and it says, "And behold, I am with you, and will keep you in all the places where you go, and will bring you again into the land, for I will not leave you until I have done that which I have spoken to you of." And that's what's carrying me, those words. When things are looking really grim and I can't see the next step and nothing is clear and it seems like my world is falling apart, I go back to those words and I go back to Jeremiah 29 because he says he is going to keep us. And so it's not about what we can do necessarily, although we do have to do something, but it's all about what he promised. And so I just hang on to those words sometimes just by my nails, because they're life. And so when we know what we know what we're learning, we know what we read. And when we encounter other Hebrews that are not at the place where we are, we just have to love them in that place because Yah has not seen fit to wake them up yet. But they will eventually wake up. And when they do, we'll still be there for them.
Yeah. And everybody's not coming on this journey though either. So one thing I learned when looking at Torah is you never see conversions. Where do you see them at? And the thing is, when we find the conversion, it's almost has to be a rabbinic exegesis of the text because it's not clear. Like you don't see Israel being like, hey, you know what? Y'all, if y'all want to be here, y'all got to follow Yah and you got a personal Lord and Savior, all this stuff. You really don't see that concept come up until like the New Testament and the Greeks, because that was their way of life. That's how they did things. But when you look at African culture, like traditionally, if somebody came into your place of residence that had a different belief than you, you showed them hospitality and you didn't do things wrong to them because you didn't want to offend their deity. Because you didn't know what their deity was going to do. You see this over and over and over again. That when you captured another place, you left the priest alone. That happened for a long time. You didn't slaughter the priest. You kept the priest. So you see these concepts in ancient times, but you won't see that today because, of all the things that has happened with like indoctrination and things of that nature. But one thing that I found that has put me at peace, and I believe I've reached a place of peace because I understand that Yah controls everything. Like I really understand that he controls everything. Deuteronomy 32:39. When I got a hold of that scripture, it put me at peace. I heal and I wound. I kill and I bring life. No one can take a person out of my hand. No one could remove you from my hands. They don't have the power to do that. And once I understood that everything in life happens within Yah's reasoning, it made things a lot more easier for me to just be able to deal with them. Not saying that I'm walking around and nothing bothering me. There's a lot of things going on. But I am now looking for the solution in the problem, whereas before I would focus in on the actual problem. Okay, this thing has approached me. I know that Yah knows this thing has approached me. What is he trying to get me to understand from this? Why is this here? How do I build from this? How can I take the Torah and then apply this so that I can be able to build from whatever it is that has approached me? So that's how I kind of look at things now, whereas before, my emotions was all over the place every time something happened. But your family will turn on you. You know, me and my aunt, I love her. She raised me. We've had some very, very strong disagreements because I just don't believe what she believes anymore. You know what I mean? And her thing is she fears that I'm gonna go to hell, and I'm like, well, hell doesn't exist. It's not a real thing. And I'm trying to explain to her like what the Torah mentions as hell is not the same thing. It becomes this power struggle because my aunt is unlearned. Like I know for a fact she doesn't know the text. She's repeating stuff that she's learned from her pastors and her mother and things of that nature. So when you have these confrontations, you come into different agreements with family members, things of that nature. I just had to tell her, okay, I understand. Sometimes the best answer is no answer. I can see why Rabbi says sometimes he said he don't know because of the things that it'll lead to when you open up that can of worms.
That's a really good example, Jason. I think you're 100% right in that in the way that you're doing. But I think what I found also, I don't know if any of you guys found this, but I just found this really amazing freedom in learning Torah. Like learning Torah. Whether I don't know if you guys feel freer. You feel free, like to be your own self and to be you. It's just like because even hearing the story of the Levite, they're thinking this stuff is real. This stuff is in the Bible. Like y'all didn't hide this stuff from us. And it's just amazing. I just feel like I'm becoming more and more myself by learning Torah, by being, understanding what's going on. And it's giving you a reality of what's really going on, rather than this false reality that isn't real. That just doesn't work. And I think a lot of those other religions doesn't give you a realistic reality check of what's going on, and so your premises and your foundation is wrong, and so the outcome and results come out wrong because you haven't got the right understanding of what's going on. Also, your expectation of God is different as well, because now you know what you are like, what you're getting to know anyway.
Well, I think what happens is when you come into this Hebrew walk, you go back and you have to re-examine the New Testament again, because everybody who's labeled in the New Testament from Mark to the end of Revelation are all Hebrews. So you have to sit and think that she has this baby, she goes and she makes a sacrifice and offers up a dove. The old woman who waits and say, hey, I don't want to die until after I see Ashiach from the tribe of Asher. You realize that John the Baptist's father is the Levite priest. So all of this is all Hebrew text. All of this is all Israelites through the text. So now you have to go back and you have to re-examine of what's going on. And I think that is the key of saying, talking to Christians, like go back to the foundation, go back to the beginning, see what the text is actually saying. Not the Eurocentric way of thinking or the Roman Catholic way of thinking. Because the Roman Catholic is not going back to priests. They're not going back to the Old Testament. They're staying in the New Testament and running with Paul's doctrine. So you need to go back. And that's the key, I think, that we as Israelites kind of reach out to our people in our family and say, please, mom, dad, cousin, sister, brother, just go back to the Torah and read it, and then come back. And then you'll see what I'm talking about. And then not realizing, like days of Easter and all of those at Pentecost, not realizing is that those are Shavuot days. That's after the Passover and going forth. And then talking about sins of sacrifice, because if you go back and you read about the Passover, it had nothing to do with sin. God made a promise to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob to bring them out and bring them into their own land, which was Canaan. And it was a birth of a nation. So they keep saying this lamb, the sacrificial lamb, in the New Testament. But when you read Torah and you go back and you read the Passover, you're like, okay, so all these people sinned. I didn't see anybody who was in the house confessing sins. So it's a rethinking of the mind. And I think that's what we try to express to our families and our friends who are in Christianity and who are in Seventh-day Adventists and all that. We're not saying that they're wrong. We're not saying don't believe in Hamas yet. We're saying go back and read the text and stop listening to prosperity pastors and teachers, because the text doesn't say any of that about Christmas and New Year's and all these other pagan holidays. That's not in the text. And all we're trying to do is just shed a light so that they can see and say, hey, you got a point. We're not trying to convert you. We're just trying to give you a little push like, hey, just take a look at it and tell me what you think. But you believe everything that's pushing on TV with Olsen and all these other pastors who don't even read. They're running on emotions to get their pockets full most of the time. So that's what we're trying to bring them out of. Like, okay, you give tithes. That's not what tithes. Tithes is supposed to give it to the poor, the motherless, the widows. Not to build pews and other things like that. And I think that's what we're trying to get across. To get them to take a second look at the original text, not what the pastor's talking about.
Yeah, and it's I agree with you saying it's important. At the end of the day, it's the answer. The solution still remains the same. That it's education is the solution. And we also we have this. There's this idea that Israel is not ready. The thing about that is we are part of the ones who will be getting Israel ready. We're getting ready ourselves. And not only that, but if we just stop there, then we get nowhere. If we don't try to get Israel ready, and we think about this, right? Remember, we are in a digital age. Prior to 2000, right? We were in less of the digital age. How did we get ready for a digital age? We always got to ask these questions. They are going to be what? Influencers. People are going to be demanding. We are the ones, demanding for new technology. Nobody is converting you. It's putting out information, and people say, hey, I want to get this new phone. I want that. I want to take pictures. I want to do that. Nobody said to you, hey, go, you have to get this new phone. Maybe there's some companies that may do that, right? But for the majority of the time, there's nobody that's saying, hey, you need to go and get this phone and you have to do this or da 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 da. And so we have to adopt that same idea where we're educating, and whoever it lands on, they will be interested, and they may not. And we do it that way so that we're not waiting for somebody. We're not waiting for someone saying, oh, well, we need a Samuel. Well, we are the Samuels, and we're gonna influence, and there'll be more Samuels. It's like Instagram, Facebook, they started, or say Amazon or any of these businesses, and they say, you know what, we want to make more people interested in. They want to promote their business more. So what? Hey, get someone to influence Amazon. Get someone to influence Shopify. Whatever it is. And so I'm only saying this to say we are influencers, and the ear that it lands upon will there will be more influencers or not. And so we just have to keep doing the works.
Yeah, and I think the problem comes in. I think the problem comes in when we stop doing their holidays. Like, okay, no, we don't do Christmas. No, I'm not doing Thanksgiving. No, I'm not doing Easter. And that's where the problem comes in at. Because then when you sit down and you tell them why you don't do that, and you tell them, well, can you show me in the scripts or in the Bible? They can't show you. Okay, so now we're back in the Roman doctrine age. Okay, the Roman Catholic Church does all these holidays, and all them, everybody else, all her daughters do the same thing. So when we come out of her daughters and we're not part of that anymore, that's where the problem comes in. It has nothing to do. It has nothing to do with our teaching or what we tell them. It's that we don't partake in their feast days anymore. And that's where the big problem comes at. Oh, you don't want to have Easter with me. Oh, you don't eat pork anymore. Or you don't eat shrimp. You don't eat crab. So all those festival days start to become a problem because you do not want to partake in it anymore. And that's where the problem comes in at. That's where the pushing is at. Because now grandma and grandpa and cousin and uncles, you're not giving gifts, you're not sharing gifts, you're not buying this, you're not celebrating birthdays.
And that's
Torah
fine.
teaches not to, and that's the issue.
Yeah, but that's fine though, because you're still educating and you're not doing it in a way. So whoever who chooses to change, that's on them. But you're not like, hey, you need to do this because I'm doing it. You're leading by an example. And it's just like you can turn on the TV and say, you know what, I want to educate myself on the animal planet or whatever it is. Or you might say, you know what, I don't want to watch that channel. You may not want to watch it today, but then maybe a couple weeks later, maybe a year later, you might say, you know what, I want to watch this. Maybe you met a girl and she likes the animal channel, and now you're interested. So it's gonna happen on their own time. But at least you did what you were supposed to do. So, but you're still.
Yeah, and we think that okay, so we changed, but they never come and ask why you changed. See, I think that's the killing point. Like, okay, you made this big transaction, you made this big transition from this to that, but they will never come and ask you why. And I think that's the key problem with a lot of us who become, realizing and walk in and say, hey, listen, this is the Hebrew way, this is the correct way. But our family members never come chase after us to ask us why.
And
that can be a problem sometimes too. Like, why you guys change? Let me sit down and explain to you. Like, they will never come and ask you that, and that sometimes could be hitting home for some of us. For me, myself, doesn't bother me. So I'm just saying for myself. Like, I sit in my house. I'm the only one. My family, they don't bother me. They don't ask me. They already know. Listen, he's not coming. End of this story. But they understand and respect it. But they will never come and ask questions like, "How do you know that you guys are Hebrews and the other people who say Jews aren't?" They will never ask that question. So,
and that really resonates with me what you're saying. I mean, you hear me in the background, because that's kind of been my own experience too. Not with my immediate family, but with our extended family members. It's the holidays, they're holy days. And that experience happened to us, and it's sad because you love your family, and some of my immediate family members are cool with it like you are, and then some of us feel bad about it, that you can say this is the reason why we're not celebrating Christmas and all of these other holidays, and that they feel is you not saying that you love them, that you don't want to commune with them and you don't want to spend time with them. That's the interpretation, but that's not where you're coming from. And because they love their tradition, in my view, more than they love the truth, they don't come and ask you questions about why. Would you please explain this to me? Can you shed some light, because I feel this way about it. And that's what can be disheartening with the folks that you love, And you're right. It's not your beliefs. It's the fact that you're not participating anymore in a tradition that they've come to love and don't want to let go of. And I think that just speaks to everyone's heart. And I don't know, someone just said, who it falls on. Someone mentioned something about influencers and those who will hear and want to seek out what you're saying will, and those who won't. And it just comes down to the soil of your heart. And, if you love the truth more than you love tradition. I remember when I first heard, this is like 15 years ago or so, the thought that we were the original and the true Hebrews, that was like the craziest thing that I had ever heard. I grew up in when I was younger, I went to a predominantly Jewish school. And so that was like crazy to me. But there was something about that, though, that hit me, that I couldn't let go of. And I had to ask questions about why this person was saying that. And it's for those who don't ask questions that we love, for those folks who don't ask us the questions. It can be disheartening and sad for us. We don't have to preach to them. We live our lives according to our own journeys and seeking out the truth. But when you see the people that you love fall away and they don't ask questions because they can't let go of their tradition, can be a difficult situation emotionally for some of us.
Okay,
It's a different war.
I think what it is that my take on it is that it's not about them giving up any tradition. Okay, I think that, like I said earlier about the journey, that they have to go through their journey. And I think sometimes, if we look at the feasts that we do follow, there are parts some of the feasts that we give presents and we give like gifts and we give like things to do with honey and stuff like that. So rather than expect them to be partaking onto the things, maybe when it's time to invite, to give gifts, you go around there on the feast and you celebrate and you give it to them in that way. So rather than expecting it to be and not to worry about it in that, I know it's painful, and I have to say to you, Bridget, I'm super proud of you, because I know when you first started and you didn't want to speak, but you're speaking a lot, and I'm proud of you, and you're doing a really great job. But I'll say that to you now.
That's so sweet. I'd rather listen in most cases than speak. But you all are wonderful, wonderful folks.
I mean, that's if you could celebrate those holidays, but when when you're on an island by yourself, you just don't have to say, hey, let's have 3 days, because you need to say, okay, like I had a neighbor across the street, and him and I would, before he passed, him and I would celebrate. We'll just go through the motions of the Passover. So that would have been a great start, but we were on the same page. So as time probably would have went on, we would have invited more people to join us in those Hebrew celebrations. But because I don't have that, I'm on an island by myself. So how do you just hope and pray that y'all bring some people that's in a like-minded manner where you can have those type of things and invite more people to come and see what's going on. The other thing is that, nobody ever told me that I was a Hebrew. So I sat down and I was wondering what's the take on my people across the world. Like, why are we in this condition? And as time goes on, I started going on YouTube, hearing more message, and remember growing up as a youth, like, one of my friends when I was in church, he was like, Jesus is black, and we would ask the pastor, and they would tell him to be quiet. Like, don't ask any more questions, or he'd be saying like I didn't read that in the Bible, that's not in there. But they would always tell him to be quiet. And the other thing I heard it like on a rap song many years ago when I was a kid, it says like, if your slave master wasn't a Christian, would you be a Christian? So it stuck in my mind. Like, okay, this is a European concept. Where were we before? And why do we use this Jewish Bible and not go through all of it? Why are we only taking half of it and not the other first half of it? So those difficulties, I mean, they didn't hit me until I became, late in my age, and then I realized, like, hey, this is about us, and that's not something that was preached to me. So, or saying like, somebody stand in the corner preaching, hey, we're Hebrews, so. It's just the Most High awaken myself and I guess everybody else who's listening.
Yes. The question is, how do we get people to ask the question why, if anything, right? So let's just say an older man he murders a younger boy or a toddler, whoever. When those things happen, the people will want to know why, right? So, but why would somebody do that to such an innocent child? So now we have to study, how do we get people to ask the question why? And I think Madam Cynthia, she gave a pretty good example, and that could be a way where you now bring gifts to them, when the feast days are on, right? Or you bring things and you're now showing them. So maybe if somebody does get a gift, they might ask, why are you giving me this? So I think that's one thing, but that at least shows how we can elicit people to ask the question why, if that's one of our goals.
Yeah, I think another difficulty that our families encounter when we come to them and present this truth that we know, they have a hard time believing or accepting that what we believe is not a religion, because they're always looking for a slot to fall into. And that's also part of the programming. It's hard to come out of that little, what's the word I'm looking for? That little box, they'll ask you, okay, well, what religion is that? And you're like, no, it's not a religion. It's a way of life. It's what our forefathers, it's how our forefathers lived. It's how they believe. We believe the same thing. And they have a really hard time because they don't know what to call it. They don't know what it's so terrible that they don't know how to deal with that.
Were you there? Oh,
I am. I'm done.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I totally understand what you're saying. I think, yeah. But I just think that, you know what it is, I respect everybody's journey. That's one thing that I'm super proud of when I read the story of Abraham and what he did, because Abraham, he went into land, but he didn't try to convert people. He just got on with it, So we just got, I think that's what we have to do as a people, is respect everyone's journey and everyone's where they are, and some people, like I said earlier, may never ever want to move out from them. They're comfortable, they are happy to be there, and that's okay. That's between them and Yah, and that's between their journey and what they've been put on this planet to do and to accomplish. And I'm happy for them to do that. Do you know what I'm saying? It may never be to come into Torah, because Yah, he says, I will be what I will be. Not what I am, but I am. But I will be to what I will be. So whatever he will be to that person, he will be that. So let's just let him do his thing, man. He's a great Almighty. I think everyone's silent now. We're gonna go. Hi, hello.
Yes.
So I think should we call it a day and wish everyone happy Sabbath? Is someone going to do the honors and do Brother Basil and do the usual goodbye Israel, Shabbat Shalom Israel. We'll speak next week. May Yah bless you. May his face shine upon you and love you all as he does. And let him be what he will be with you in your life. Shabbat shalom, Israel. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom. Thank you.
Shabbat shalom, Israel.
Shabbat shalom, family.
That's the lovely voice right there.
Shabbat shalom.
I want to hear the keys. It is.